Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Game Day show for Purdue Week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. With us in just a few minutes will be Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. Before that, let's open with my view from Section 17 and a few thoughts from Jim Harbaugh. The bye week was not so much about the great season this team is having, but about the NCAA probe going on. It seems like much of the national media has already found their truth. They are happy to base their decisions on unproven allegations and rumors being floated daily online for clickbait. So much for due process and letting the actual facts come to light. They will eventually. Sadly, the outstanding season we're seeing play out is being overshadowed by all of this noise, and it won't stop anytime soon. The Michigan coaching staff and players can't control the rumor mill, but they can control what happens on the field. I am certain they can't wait to get on the field against Purdue on Saturday night and do what they do best, which is win football games. At his Monday presser, Jim Harbaugh was asked how the team balanced a bye week of rest and relaxation without losing momentum.
I think you do both at the same time. We had a good week last week. In fact, it was so good that gave the guys one extra day from what was planned originally, and the opportunity to get away from football, get with their families, or every guy did something. Wasn't exactly, not every single guy went home. Some guys stayed, did treatment, whatever they thought was best for them.
Jim was asked how he felt about playing a night game in November.
Playing when they're scheduled, when they're scheduled, where they're scheduled, and there's preferences I have too. I mean, I prefer toe to meat leather at 12 o'clock noon on a Saturday afternoon, and like a lot of everybody, prefer to be 72 and sunny and no humidity. That's not reality. That's not the fact. So you get prepared to play in any condition, at any time, anywhere, and just go out and do your best. Get prepared for it and go do your best you possibly can.
My guest today says it's too bad the off-field noise is taking away from what this staff and team have accomplished and what a special season this could end up being. With us next to discuss that and much more is Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. So stay with us. Here with us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week as we get ready for a visit from the Purdue Boilermakers is Clayton Sayfie, who does such a great job covering all things Michigan for the Wolverine magazine, thewolverine.com, the Wolverine on 3. Clayton, great to have you back with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, as you and I discussed before we started taping, we are at the time of the year where it's the home stretch of a great season. We're anticipating the great matchups in the next 4 weeks, but we have other stuff that's going on, so of course we need to address it. And thought we'd start off by talking about the college football playoffs. Of course, Tuesday night, the first rankings were released, and some of the folks there on the committee said what's happening with the NCAA has no impact, how we're viewing the top four. I guess for now we have to run with that, but this is not an official NCAA probe that's going on right now, so it doesn't mean eventually the CFP committee might not take the allegations into consideration, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. I think things are always changing, and if more information came out, then I think they would maybe make some different changes, but I wouldn't expect that at this point. I mean, I think the worst of the illegal off-campus scouting allegations have kind of come out, and there are mixed reviews on how much of a competitive advantage something like that, if true, would actually even give Michigan. I mean, the NCAA said back in 2021 that off-campus scouting in person gives a minimal competitive advantage. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no competitive advantage, but I think the College Football Playoff Committee made itself very clear, both on ESPN after the rankings came out and in their teleconference, that they're going to judge what's on the field. They're going to judge what the team has done on the field, and the NCAA is going to deal with the other stuff. And right now, Michigan has been absolutely dominant on the field, albeit against lesser competition. They haven't had the toughest schedule to this point, but they've won all 8 games by 24 or more points. That's the first time they've won 8 in a row by 24 or more since 1904, actually an 11-game stretch that went from the end of 03 to 04. So unprecedented stuff. And the games will get tougher as they go down the stretch. Not overly surprised they were number 3. You look at Ohio State, their resume suggests that they would be the top team in the country, although they haven't necessarily looked like it. If you go by the quote-unquote eye test. And then Georgia sitting there at 2. Similar situation to Michigan. Their schedule will get tougher in November, and we'll kind of see how it goes from there. But I think them being at 3 is everything to do with what's happened on the field and really nothing to do with the allegations, which is a big win for Michigan because now at least if nothing changes going forward, you're looking at being judged fairly by the committee based on what you've done on the field. And if they win a couple big games, as we know that are coming up in November, I don't think anyone will challenge how legitimate this Michigan team is.
Well, Clayton, I think most Michigan fans, and I know media covering the team, would like to concentrate, as you and I discussed, on just what's happening on the field. But we've reached a point there's no chance of that happening, which to me is really infuriating after having followed Michigan football all of my life. And, you wait to get to this point in the program and kaboom. Because really right now, especially on a national basis, what's going on off the field is overshadowing a great season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, I think the bye week came at a good time in terms of being able to kind of handle some of this stuff. Well, the players are off for a couple of days, coaches get a little bit of time. But at the same time, I think not having a game over the weekend allowed this to kind of fester and continue to, news was leaking out, almost daily last week, it seemed like. That sort of thing. So it is kind of something that not only this team is dealing with, but honestly, this era of Michigan football, as we look back on it years and years from now, it'll always be, at the very least, and probably more than that, a footnote in what this stretch of success has been, which I think is disappointing for, a lot of the fans and the people within that building. You can tell they can't comment much on it, but they're pretty infuriated about that, how they're being viewed right now. And we'll see more facts come out. At the current juncture, as you and I are talking, obviously a lot of speculation going on about Connor Stalions potentially being at the CMU versus Michigan State game, the pictures that everybody has seen at this point of him on the sideline. I do believe that was him. And really that signals the first guaranteed, as long as that is confirmed him, the first guaranteed NCAA violation. Some of the other stuff they're doing may be operating in a gray area. we'll see more facts come out. Did anyone direct Connor Stallions to send people to games to in-person scout? Who else knew about this as well? Who was funding those trips? So far, not a ton of evidence that the entire program and Jim Harbaugh was involved, or really none that's been reported at this point. But again, you got to let the facts play out. And then we can talk contract extension too, because that seems to play into it as well. There's all these different angles to this, but I think that's kind of where we stand at this point. And from what we've heard from the players, I think a lot of them are determined to make a statement this November as well. They were fired up before, and I think this has only added fuel to that fire.
Well, and that is one of my concerns. I'd like to think this investigation in some ways is making this team focus and resolve even stronger. On the other hand, you have a lot of young guys, and they have all of the access to the information out there on social media and every other form of media. So it also has the chance of becoming a distraction for them, doesn't it?
It does. And Trevor Keegan, we talked to him on Tuesday night, and he said that he deleted Twitter because every time you go on it, you're seeing all sorts of things about this. And I think it is bothersome. He actually used that word, bothersome. For the guys that have been here for a long time, and even the guys that have been here the last couple of years, and really even some that have just been here this year, to see that their accomplishments are being questioned by people and they can't really respond to that. And I think that's why there's that motivation, is because they feel like their response is going to be what happens in the next 4 games, what happens potentially in 3 games after that. They want to play 15 games this year. They want to be there in Houston on January 8th, and they want to, see confetti come down on them and as they enter the stage, not walk off the field in that. So I think that there's that added motivation, but there's no doubt that this could become a distraction as well. I will say one thing, watching Jim Harbaugh teams over the years, and this even goes back to his time in San Francisco, is that there have been distractions around him. There have been, there's been a lot of chaos, a lot of talk, a lot of outside noise. He operates well in chaos, and I will give him credit for that. He's been able to keep this team together. I think there are great leaders on this team, so that bodes well. But as we'll see how they continue to respond to this on the field. And also, if not a ton more comes out, which, knock on wood, you never know, then I think it will quiet down at least a little bit. And as they continue to play more games, that will be more of what people are talking about. But there's no question this is going to linger for quite some time, really indefinitely, for not only us covering it, but, the players, the coaches, and the fans.
Well, there's so much we don't know about what's going on behind the scenes with the NCAA or Michigan administration. But whatever is going on, all of a sudden we're hearing Jim's contract extension is being accelerated. So what do you make of all that?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting case because a lot of people on the outside, particularly national voices, forget who exactly it was. Somebody from ESPN said it would be the ultimate middle finger to the NCAA for Jim Harbaugh to get a contract extension. And I couldn't disagree anymore. It has really nothing to do with the NCAA investigation, other than to say that right now, the Michigan administration doesn't have any reason not to believe Jim Harbaugh when he says he didn't direct this operation and he didn't have any knowledge of it. So I think that's good news if you're a Michigan fan. But this is completely separate from the NCAA stuff. Jim Harbaugh, it's been long overdue, a big contract extension for him, and particularly a raise for him. It's, coming into this year, he was the 4th highest paid coach in his own division, let alone the Big Ten. And I think we all know that he deserves more than that. You look at these rankings that people do of the top coaches in the country. He's top 2, top 3, or really top 3 in most, if not all of them. And I think we could all agree he deserves that. The NFL hiring cycle is coming up. I know that you and I are excited to cover all that down the road in January and February. But that's a reality right now. And if he's going to be your coach, he deserves to make more, and you want to keep him happy in that you're going to show him the respect that he deserves. And he talked about that. Respect really for him is reflected in a contract. And I think that that's kind of where we're at. The Michigan administration met this week with Athletic Director Ward Manuel, President Santa Ono there, the Board of Regents, and they voted unanimously to take this off hold and, off the pause and say, let's move forward with this. And, I think that's, it's something we could see in the coming days, him get that contract extension. And I think that would let some Michigan fans breathe a sigh of relief. But I will still say that, doesn't mean they're out of the woods completely with this entire investigation. It's a little bit separated. And, I think a lot of fans understand that. but some people on the outside are kind of conflating things.
Well, meanwhile, back on the field, Michigan used the bye week to recruit, to rest, and then start preparing for Purdue on Saturday night. From an injury perspective, as we begin this final 4-game stretch, this team is in really good shape overall, isn't it?
It's almost unprecedented. And I mean, it kind of worked out how they wanted it to. They alluded to this in the offseason, how one of the goals this year, and they probably wouldn't say it's because of the schedule, but I think they knew deep down that due to the schedule, they were going to be able to do this, is they wanted to be healthy at the end of the year. Every team in the country wants to, but Michigan seemed to really put in a plan to be able to do that. And the biggest thing is they've been able to win these games in dominant fashion. We talked about the streak there of 8 straight with 24 plus point wins. Pretty unprecedented in that way. But the starters have been able to come out of the games in the third quarter. J.J. McCarthy has thrown only 4 passes in any fourth quarter. He's only played in 1 against Rutgers, and that was just at the beginning of it before he was pulled. So these guys feel good. Trevor Keegan is a guy who's battled lingering injuries the past 2 years. He said he feels great right now. Chris Jenkins has actually been working through a little bit something, but feels healthier after the bye week. But he said that he can tell that these guys feel fresher at this point in the year. And that's huge. You could have an advantage against some of these teams down the stretch, but most importantly, it just allows you to play your best football. And it's something that we didn't see a year ago. Injuries didn't necessarily pile up until Blake Corum went down in the Illinois game, but you had, Luke Schoonmaker was dealing with some different things. Mike Morris went down and was limited even when he came back. Those are 2 of your top players. Blake Corum's down. Donovan Edwards wasn't at full strength. I mean, you could go on and on. So I think they're set up injury-wise much better than they were a year ago.
Well, let's talk about this Michigan offense, Clayton, for just a minute or two if we could. And we've seen them play 8 games. We know J.J. has taken his play to another level, clearly. The passing game has been very good because of that. But the running game, a lot of our fans can't stand prosperity, so it's maybe not as good as they expected in their eyes. And I think to some extent that's because we're more of a 50-50 team this year, which, oddly enough, a lot of fans last year were saying that at this time, saying, hey, we've got to be more balanced. We've got to throw the ball more. Well, we're near that 50-50 this year, but still, do you see any concern in the running game?
I see a little bit of concern in the sense that it doesn't seem like the offensive line is getting quite the displacement, the push that it did last year. But you're also comparing that to a line that won the Joe Moore Award and was an elite line. I think this one is very good and right up there as well. I will say part of me wonders if we're going to see more run game success when they do have to play a fourth quarter game, when the starters stay in and they get to wear these teams down, because that's where we saw a lot of the big runs a year ago. You think of a number of games. I can think of off the top of my head, big runs late against Maryland, Iowa, Ohio State, Purdue in the Big Ten championship as well. They had big runs throughout those games, and they're not getting as many of those, I think, this year. But I think that's a piece of it, maybe being able to wear these teams down. But you have to look at the offense overall, as you kind of pointed to, and it's much more balanced. I think it's much more dynamic, and I think it sets them up much better to compete for and potentially win a national championship when you have an elite quarterback, a guy who's kind of an eraser, as I like to call him, back there, where things don't have to be perfect for him. Like a free rusher could come through, but he can get past him, or he can find the hot route. He can scramble out and make the plays that we've seen him make all season long. His accuracy has been fantastic. And you're right, when you look at it here, just over 200 run plays for Michigan while JJ's in the game this year, and 191 pass plays for JJ. And they've been leading these games by a lot. So that would lead you to believe they'd run more, and they have just a little bit, but it's pretty much 50-50 when these games are quote unquote in doubt with the starters in. So I think that speaks to how much more this offense can do. And I think once they start leaning on Blake Corum a little bit more down the stretch when they need to, I think that will bode well for the run game as well. But not overly concerned. But I do think it's something that they've admitted that they want to improve as they move forward here. And I think it's something they worked on last week.
And I agree with all of that. And another thought that I have is because of how we've won these first 8 games, we really haven't shown a lot of what this offense is capable of, like jamming it down your throat if we want to. And I might be wrong, but I think they can still dig deeper into the playbook and will, don't you?
Oh, I do. I've been a big proponent of saying that that's absolutely true over the years. with Jim Harbaugh teams. Some teams don't do this, where they hold back a bunch of stuff, but Jim Harbaugh seems to do that. I think we saw it last year with the game plan against Ohio State, and really a couple of other years where offensively especially, they've come out with some really good stuff against Ohio State that you haven't seen all season. You can think of a few plays from last year. I mean, the Colston Loveland touchdown, things like that. So I think that that's clearly something that they're doing, and it's kind of a staple of Jim Harbaugh coach teams. And I think that's why you could question some of these different things. But at the end of the day, they've proven over the last 2.5 years that in those bigger games, they've got a little bit more juice, and they've got, some of their better stuff. They've got their fastball, so to speak, in those big games.
Well, Joel Klatt said something a couple of weeks ago I found really interesting. He said, we know Michigan's offense is really good, but really good might not be good enough against Penn State or Ohio State. And he said in either of those two games, J.J. McCarthy might have to take the team on his back and win a game. And then he said, we'll really know how good he is and the Michigan offense is. Do you think he has a valid point there?
Yeah, I think that's valid. But I think we know more about J.J. McCarthy and this Michigan offense than I think some people on the outside think they know. We have seen J.J. McCarthy win games. We've seen him keep Michigan in games. You think of the Fiesta Bowl. He made two brutal mistakes for Michigan with those pick sixes, but he also was one of the reasons why they were in that game. You can talk about countless other games, and especially this year too. I don't want to discount totally what they've done just because the opponents haven't been that good. J.J. McCarthy has been fantastic. We will find out more about what this Michigan offense is in terms of playing some of those elite defenses, and I think Penn State and Ohio State have those. But really, frankly, Mike, when you look at Penn State's offense and Ohio State's offense, they don't scare me that much. And maybe you only need 24, 27 points to win one of those games. I'm not saying you wouldn't like to put up 30, 5 or 42 or something like that. But, the other teams have to prove something too against this Michigan defense and against this Michigan team. So I think that's going to be a piece of it. But Trevor Keegan, I've pointed to him a couple of times. He's one of my favorite guys to interview, but he said it this week that November is when you're, is how you are remembered. And I think is what he said. And, so those big games are going to define the season, not only for the offense, but the entire team.
Well, myself, I'm not as concerned about the offense as a lot of folks are, a lot of our fans are, because I think the defense really is that good. Some say, like the offense, it maybe hasn't been tested by a really good offense. And I agree with you. I'm not sure how good Penn State or Ohio State's offense really is. So right now, today, we know we have a very good D, but it'll take maybe 4 more weeks to determine if it is an elite unit. And I suppose that's fair. You have to be able to shut down Penn State and Ohio State to prove that.
I totally agree. And when you look at some of the numbers with this defense, I mean, what are they allowing? Like 5.7 points per game? I think I looked at that earlier. The numbers are just ridiculous. I will say, I think the Michigan offense has probably been tested a little bit more than the Michigan defense. There have been a couple times where maybe they could have been exploited and the other team just doesn't quite have the horses to do it, or the quarterback specifically. And as Mike Elston said a couple weeks ago, I mean, some of these teams are completely changing their identity when they go against this Michigan defense, which speaks to how good the defense is. But it also speaks to you're not playing a ton of high-octane offenses yet this year. We'll see it a little bit more against Penn State and Ohio State, but I agree. I don't think those are necessarily elite offensive units. So it'll be interesting. I do still have a couple questions maybe about cornerback, on the other side of the field to Will Johnson. Will they hold up against, when you do get in a matchup with a Marvin Harrison Jr., that sort of thing. When you do get in a matchup maybe with some of these other teams around the country, if you get into the college football playoff, the pass rush, is it going to get home in those big games, in those big moments when it has to? They haven't been tested enough for us to know the answer to that question yet, I think is an important thing. So I think this defense is fantastic. I'm still also kind of a little bit waiting, as we all are, to see how it steps up in those big moments, because those are going to define what this defense is, as you alluded to.
Well, this Saturday night, it's another big coast-to-coast game under the lights against a struggling Purdue team. This is not the team we played in the Big Ten championship game last year. So, looking at it objectively, I think if Michigan brings their A game and has truly shut out the noise, I won't say it's going to be an easy win, but this is a team, Purdue, they should handle convincingly, wouldn't you say, Clayton?
I would agree. This is a completely different team. I remember talking to Tom Dienhart, who does a great job with our Purdue On 3 site. Has covered the Big Ten for years and years before the Big Ten championship game last year. And we were saying, hey, they'll be facing off in Ann Arbor next year as well. And he said, yeah, this is not going to be a very good Purdue team next year. And that's when he thought Jeff Brom was going to be continuing as their head coach. Now they have a first-time head coach in Ryan Walters, who was the defensive coordinator at Illinois last year, who did a really good job against that Michigan offense in that game, as we all remember, the Jake Moody game. So that's kind of where they're at. But it's complete rebuild mode for them, and I think it was going to be that anyway. I think Michigan should win pretty comfortably, and I think the Michigan players will kind of look to get that rhythm back after the bye week, shake off any rust, and build some momentum as they go into Penn State, because we know with an even more nationally prominent game that week, people are going to be talking about Michigan, and people are going to try to find chinks in the armor and try to find a reason to believe that Penn State's going to knock them off. They're going to discredit what they've done in the past due to the quote-unquote sign stealing, all of that. So I think this is a big opportunity for Michigan to play their A game, as you said. I completely agree with you there, and kind of quiet down the noise in that way a little bit. But Purdue, not much of what they've done this year, including getting ran by Nebraska last week, scares you, and it feels like it's going to be another game that's been similar to the last 8.
Well, we have to take care of Purdue on Saturday night, so we know the team can't look ahead, but we most certainly can. So let's peek ahead to next week in Happy Valley. Always a tough place to go. From my point of view, the last 2 games that I've seen Penn State play have shown me they are a really good team, great defense. Maybe not the team any of us thought they were a few weeks ago. Still, I expect this to be a game, but again, if Michigan brings their A game, plays clean, I think it's a win. How about you?
I predicted it before the year, and I'm sticking with it too. I actually thought I was going to be a little bit more worried about Penn State at this time before the season than I am right now, as we're sitting here, a week and a half away. And it's for the reasons you mentioned. Like, that offense just doesn't feel like it has as much juice as I thought it was going to with Drew Aller at quarterback. I think he's a young guy that has a bright future, but haven't totally seen it in some of the bigger games and when they're tested as him being, an elite guy that's going to push them over the top like they hoped for in Happy Valley. They got 2 great running backs. They do have some weapons offensively. It's the defense, I think, that is easily their strongest suit. I mean, they have a lot of really talented players, a lot of really athletic players. I've been really impressed watching that defense this year. So typically, the home team in this series has kind of won, when it goes between Jim Harbaugh and James Franklin. When the road team wins, like Michigan did in 2021, it's a grinded out type of game, and kind of what I would expect at this point.
Well, if we do come out of Happy Valley with that W, then go to Maryland and take care of business. And you never know, we've had some dicey games there in Maryland over the years, the last time we were there. If we do that, it sets up the game. Ohio State might not be, well, they aren't the offensive juggernaut they've been in recent years, but they do have Marvin Harrison Jr. and a very good running game if Travion is healthy. He looked healthy last week, and what appears to be a really good defense. So if both teams take care of business in the next 3 weeks, these are really 2 pretty evenly matched teams, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they are. And, for the first time in a while, I think probably since 2011, you could say Michigan has the edge in terms of quarterback. And I think that's huge in this game. Typically, the quarterback that plays better wins the game. And I know the last couple of years, maybe a push, or you could argue one way or the other. I would say J.J. McCarthy, was definitely the better guy last year. But year before that, you could argue quarterback play is really important in this. And not to dumb it down to one thing, but that's what the game has been, kind of decided by quite a few times when you go throughout the years. And that's a huge edge for Michigan, I would say. I just think that it being at home, too, is really going to help this Michigan team. At the same time, I would argue that Ohio State still has a lot of talent, even on their offense. And, maybe more talent than Michigan had on offense last year, even though Michigan was the team making all the big plays. So it doesn't mean the script is going to go how it did the last couple of years. I would probably bet on it being a closer game than it was the last couple of years. But I still like Michigan there. And, again, number 9 is a big reason why. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. He may win it. He's got these two opportunities coming up if he plays clean in the other two games. But Penn State, Ohio State, with the nation watching, I think could really put him over the top. And I think the nation is kind of waiting for one guy to emerge. So, not to dumb it down to one thing, but when you're going into this stretch run and you have the quarterback that you've been waiting years for, and really, if Jim Harbaugh says he could be the best in Michigan history, you've got to feel good about your chances in those big games.
No, absolutely. That's why this week I want JJ to go out of bounds and go down when he takes off, because we need him the rest of the way. So, yeah, I'm amped up about the next 4 weeks. So it's going to be so exciting. Final question before we let you get away, though, Clayton. Taking into account what we still have 4 games left, and there are still unknowns about this Michigan team until we play Penn State and Ohio State specifically, do you think right now, from what you've seen this year, Jim Harbaugh has finally built a team that can climb this mountain and finish it off by winning a national championship?
I think he has. Things have to go your way. I remember John Beilein always talking about how even when they have those successful tournament runs to the national championship game, he would be the first to admit you need some breaks here and there. Now it's a little bit crazier with the NCAA tournament in basketball. You certainly do need a game-winning shot here, or, a bounce to go your way there. It's similar in football, but, I do think that this team is built to win the national championship. They feel, a couple of years ago, coming off the Georgia loss, some people said, is this the best that Michigan can, Jim Harbaugh can build at Michigan? And, is he better off just going to the NFL? This was the pinnacle. It's too tough for a Big Ten team not named Ohio State to compete for the national championship. And I disagreed with that then. And I think that what they've done the last couple of years has proved that theory wrong. And I think that with this quarterback, again, going back to J.J. McCarthy, and the talent that he has around him and how dynamic this team's looked on both sides of the ball, that they're going to be right there. Coming into the season, I looked up and down the rosters and did research like the rest of us on, the different teams that are contending for the national title. And I had a question mark, big one, for just about every team. That includes Georgia. And with Michigan, yeah, there were a couple question marks, but I just feel like with what they brought back, you feel better about them than really any other team out there, question mark wise. And throughout the year, I've only been, felt more confident in, what this team can do. So, long story short, I do think that this team is going to be right there and that they can compete for the national title.
Well, it's the first day of November as we record this and get the show up. It's going to be an incredibly exciting month, and unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of other things going on, which we discussed at the top of the show, but all in all, it's going to be exciting. Here with us today has been Clayton Sayfie, who covers Michigan for the Wolverine magazine, thewolverine.com, and the Wolverine on 3, and does a great job. You're one of my daily staples, Clayton, so keep up the great work. We thank you for being so generous with your time, as always, and look forward to having you back soon.
My pleasure. It's been an absolute honor, so thanks for having me.
On Quick Hits today, the only injury update this week came from Jim's Monday presser. He said Kalel Mullings is practicing. He didn't say if he would play, though. We'll have to wait until the game day roster is released on Saturday to see if there are any other injuries reported. Here are a few game day notes of interest. Michigan holds the lead in this series with 41 wins against 14 losses. The first meeting was on November 1st of 1890 in Ann Arbor, a 34-6 Michigan win. Last year, we met Purdue in the Big Ten championship game on December 3rd in Indy, winning 43-22. Head coach Ryan Walters is in his first year as head man. He has a 2-6 record. Last season, Purdue finished 8-6, 6-3 in the Big Ten, and were, of course, the West Division champs. They played LSU in the Citrus Bowl and were hammered 63-7. The weatherman says game time temps on Saturday will be near 50.
There will be light winds and a very small chance of rain. Kickoff is scheduled for 7:30 p.m. and will be televised by NBC. Purdue is a banged-up team, and they're struggling on both sides of the ball. They have some players, not enough to match up with Michigan, though. For our part, Saturday's game will be about coming off the bye week refreshed and ready to prove that we are that good. The players know what's going on with the NCAA. They just need to shut out the noise to the best of their ability, stick together, and play like they know they can. If they can do that, we'll be 9-0 when the clock strikes midnight on Saturday. Next week, we head for Happy Valley and a huge clash with once-beaten Penn State. On Tuesday's Visitors Edition, we'll be joined by the radio play-by-play voice of the Nittany Lions, Steve Jones. On Thursday's Game Day show, our guest will be Chris Ballas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. So tell your Wolverine family and friends about the show, and make sure you join us. That will do it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat Purdue. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!